And we welcome everyone to our WKYC.com high school football preview show, week number 6, the regular season finale this coming weekend. I'm Dave DeNatale, and from the Carey kitchen, that is Tyler Carey. As we wrap up the regular season, as we always do, we will start out by announcing our game of the week, and excited about this one, Tyler. Two teams that I don't know if we've covered since we started the game of the week in 2018, and two programs above 500, and I think anxious to get to the postseason, looking to get a win beforehand.
Absolutely, Dino. I'm very excited about this one too, and it is a place that in our game of the week history, only 3 years, we've never been to before, but these are two very familiar programs to the people of Summit County. The Stow-Munroe Falls Bulldogs will be headed to Nordonia to take on the Knights. Two teams that have had some very nice wins in this very short season. Nordonia can really put up the points. Stow, kind of more known for its defense, but I expect this to be a very even matchup of two suburban league rivals as we approach playoff time next week.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. This is going to be whose style comes to take the lead. Now, having said all that, Stow last week held Brecksville to 15 points and yet still lost the game, which surprised me. That was a game I know you were following when we were out doing our game of the week last week. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought that if that game was going to be a low-scoring game, that somehow the Bulldogs would figure out how to punch out a win, and they just couldn't do it at the end.
No, and I think obviously when you hold a team with Joey Labus at quarterback at just 15 points, that shows you have a good amount of ability on defense. But again, they just struggled to get enough points to be able to break through and win that game. And this has kind of been a trend for Stow. They hadn't lost going into that week, but they had kind of struggled with some lesser competition. Case in point, the week before they played North Royalton, who's now 0-5 on the year, and they only won 21-14. So they have really found points at a premium, and I don't know if that is going to work against this Nordonia team that has the ability to put up 40, 50, even 60 points when they need to. The quarterback, one of the best in the state right now, that would be Billy Levac, who can throw it up to 400 yards when he can. Sal Perrine, running back, can run for over 200 yards at any given moment. It's going to be strength versus strength, and something's got to give. So it's going to be interesting to see which one comes out on top in this game because, as mentioned, they can't both be good in the same week, you would think, when they face each other.
Yeah, Stow's 3-1, Nordonia's 3-2. One of their losses was to Hudson. Okay, well, listen, we saw Hudson a couple weeks ago. Elite team this year. And surprising, they only scored 27 points, lost 50-27. It was the game 2 weeks ago, and you were following it because you were giving us kind of the back and forth as we were doing our game of the week. Losing to Highland, I think, was kind of a shocker to a lot of people. We were out in Wadsworth that particular night. And following that game that was going on, they allowed Highland to kind of stay in it and then win it at the end. That's the one I think that Jeff Fox and company could look back and say, man, we'd like to have that fourth quarter back, that second half back. That would probably be the game.
Especially when it was as close as it was. And you look on the other side, Stow also played Highland this year and beat them 31-7, their most impressive win of the year by far. Now, we're not going to talk down on Highland here. The Hornets are a pretty good team, decent program, but yeah, you almost look at that and go, okay, you feel like that was the one that slipped away, and it doesn't matter as much because every team's going to make the playoffs, but it could hurt your seeding, and it kind of serves as that measuring stick against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs do have a couple of Division I prospects. Dalen Stovall at receiver, kind of been bottled up a little bit this year with the points being at a premium. As I said, DeAnthony Beckton is someone you're really going to want to keep an eye on. He's the safety, the leader of that defense. He's committed to Central Michigan. And I think you're going to want to see how he can respond to this great Nordonia quarterback, especially the passing game, in trying to keep them at bay. I feel like this is tough to predict because we've already mentioned the differences on both sides of the ball. But again, we saw what these teams did against Highland. We saw what they've done against other teams within the Suburban League. And we know that these are teams with the talent to win on any given Friday night. So it's very tough to gauge, I think, where it's going to go. You might want to give the edge to Nordonia just because they've been able to win the games they're supposed to win by wide margins and because it's going to be at home. But I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be placing a bet on this game if it had odds in Vegas.
No, I agree. It's one of the things that kind of attracted us to this game is that these contrasting styles, but two good programs, two great teams clashing. So that's going to be our game coming up this Friday. As we look back real quick at week 5, I mean, certainly the thing that comes to my mind is the game we had a chance to go see out in Solon. Kirtland Hornets, that was another milestone win in that program, and certainly under the tutelage of Tiger Laverty, to go in and handle the Comets the way they did. I think a lot of people who follow high school football in this state really took notice that oh yeah, there's the Division 5 team. What are they going to do against Division 1? Well, we saw what they did. They went in and took care of business and not just won the game, but physically overpowered the Comets, which I'm not sure anybody thought that would be the manner in which they would win that game.
You're not kidding. And I said it Friday night. I think we expected that this could be a close game that Kirtland could win. I think most people thought talent, the bigger, stronger talent for the D1 team in Solon would win out. But had you watched that game as just a blind observer almost, you would have thought that the Kirtland Hornets were the D1 team and Solon was coming in from D5. It was just a thorough beatdown from here on out. 27-7 to me it wasn't even that close when you really sit back and watch what we had witnessed in that game with Pat McQuaid being picked off 3 times, Liam Powers just methodically leading that offense, having 3 total touchdowns. I think Tiger Laverty said it may have been the toughest opponent he had ever scheduled in the regular season during his time at Kirtland. And we were anxious to see, could they live up to the hype? We knew that they would have the confidence. And boy, did they display that confidence throughout those 48 minutes. And to anyone who was doubting this team of, well, they're a great program, they win all these games, but they're Division 5, they're a small school. If they played yada, 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 they get their butts kicked. That's over. That conversation is over. They have positioned themselves not just as one of the best small school programs in the state of Ohio, but probably one of the top 5 programs in the entire state at this moment.
Wouldn't get any argument from me on that. Yeah, you mentioned Liam Powers was terrific. I said this on Twitter after the game. I thought Joey Grazia, from the defensive side of things, played as well. We've done 35 or so of these games this year, over the last couple of years. That was as well as of a defensive performance as I've seen by an individual player in the last couple of years. Just, he had the interception, but I mean, I felt like it was a broken record. Every time Khalil Eichelberger tried to find a lane or get to the outside, there Grazia was, open field tackle, bring him down. I mean, 3-yard gain, 2-yard gain, not allowing Eichelberger to get any kind of big yardage. It was incredible. I mean, he just was everywhere from his defensive back spot. I took my hat off. I just was so impressed. And it kind of was, it was a collective effort. Everybody on Kirtland's defense played really well. But, you mentioned with the 3 interceptions. But, from one individual standpoint, Joey was terrific. What else stood out from you from last Friday and last weekend?
Well, there were really 2 big games that we were keeping an eye on last week. The first one was the Battle of Akron down at Infosition Stadium. Hoban taking on St. Vincent St. Mary. In the end, it was the Knights that came away with a 37-9 victory, really making a statement against their arch rival. Some of the guys that really stood out, Victor Dawson had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Lamar Sperling, a sophomore, had 3 of them. They held the Irish to just 31 total yards in the first half, Dino. and really just made a statement early that allowed them to pull away in this game. I think Hoban has pretty much consistently proven that they're the best team in the state right now. They had a little bit of a squeaker against Benedictine, although the Bengals are a pretty good team, but really just coming in and beating up on a St. B team that had just beaten up on Solon themselves the week before. To win that game going away just asserts that, okay, we're still number one. We know we're still number one. We're just getting ready for the state playoffs again. Let's go for yet another championship.
Yeah, it just seems like right now it's theirs until somebody knocks them off the mountain. And Benedictine gave them gave everybody, at least an idea that, on the right night, you have the right scheme, the right approach, you can stay with them, but can you beat them? Can you figure out in the fourth quarter how to overcome this team? Easier said than done, as we've seen here. I mean, Massillon obviously did it last year in the playoffs, but not an easy thing to do. So, yeah, I would agree with your assessment. Right now, they're playing best in the state in any class.
And they've kind of been doing that for the last 5 or so years when you really look back on it. One other game that I think the entire region had their eye on, the St. Ignatius Wildcats, in just their third game of the year, Dino, going down to Stark County at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium to take on the Massillon Tigers. It was Massillon that came away with a 21-14 victory. The key in the game, 7:10 left, Jackson French, the St. Ignatius quarterback, tries to throw a swing pass to his left, game tied at 14. Ball hits the turf. It's ruled a lateral. Those are always so tricky. You try to throw that little pass. You're not necessarily trying to throw it backwards, but you do. It's ruled a fumble. The Tigers get it. And the next play, Raekwon Benson, 15 yards for the touchdown, 21-14. Massillon wins this game. A huge, huge win for the Tigers. And I got to tell you, we talk about momentum. St. Ignatius right now it is not on their side.
No.
This is 2 losses in a row now to St. Edward, their arch rival. Massillon, a very tough loss on the road. And now they got to play St. Xavier in week 4 as the playoffs approach. Unlike last year, they're going to make it because of how the rules are set up. But I got to imagine Chuck Kyle is not loving his position right now, knowing that the season's about to end.
Yeah, the one thing you sit there and you say, maybe these close losses will kind of galvanize you as a team when you get into the postseason. And, if you have to have a rematch against St. Edward, if you got to deal with Menor, in the region, maybe that will be something that can kind of get you over the top. We'll wait and see. I'll be curious to see how they do against St. X. As far as this week's schedule, TC, obviously, again, our game, Stow-Munroe Falls, will be at Nordonia. That's our game of the week. What else are you going to be watching Friday night?
Well, Dino, not as many big games this week, mostly because I think some teams are almost ready to take a week off, knowing that this week essentially doesn't matter. The coaches are already voting on the seeding for the postseason. We don't know yet when that's going to be announced, either this week or next week. But either way, these week 6 games will not have an effect on that. The 2 games I think everybody is going to be looking at, we mentioned St. Ignatius and St. X. I think that's going to be huge for the Wildcats to see if they can get just a little bit of momentum going into the postseason. St. Edward, who's been red hot lately, they're going to be taking on a very pesky Benedictine team that they're 2-3, but they've had some very, very close losses against some excellent teams. And then on Saturday, down in Stark County, I mentioned that you never want to say this game doesn't matter, even if both teams are winless. Canton-McKinley and Massillon, Washington, the greatest high school football rivalry in the country. I have no problem saying that. I don't even think it's up for debate. It's always a close matchup, always a very bitter showdown. It's going to be different this year because we're not going to have the 20,000-plus fans down in the stadium, but both of those communities are going to be revved and ready for it, and that's going to be taking up all of their attention this weekend.
Yeah, that's still, by the way, a goal for maybe next season for us to be able to do that game. I know it's on a Saturday, it's not a Friday night, but man, that's what it's all about. I can remember the day that it was announced that high school football would be able to come back and the OHSA was going to put together the 6-game season, Masslin's Twitter site and McKinley's Twitter site were going back and forth at each other, sniping like it was game week. So, this means a lot that we are able to do this and we're able to have these rivalry games. And so, you know what? It's going to be fun. For the kids, again, it means very little in the big scope of things in terms of, getting yourself into the postseason. You said that's already been – coaches have already voted on that. But it's 365 days of bragging rights. Actually, it would be a little more. Be more like, add almost another month to that. So 395 days of bragging rights for 2021. That means a lot for folks down in Stark County.
Yeah, this is, you talk about bragging rights. I think that may mean more than just about anything, even the state championships that both these schools have won many of over the years. Both teams have Division I prospects littered all over the field. Both teams have only lost one game, Massillon by 1 point to St. Edward, and McKinley by just a touchdown to Perry, who's undefeated this year. So it's going to be the unstoppable force, a movable object, however you want to say it, two heavyweights, not just in name but in talent. And I think we're all going to have our eyes on it as we take any action this week. That is, we talk about, we're our game of the week, but I think for most people, just because of nostalgia reasons, we can't blame them. This is going to be the game of the week.
Yeah,
and
I concur. The game of the week, the game of the season. Yeah, it's going to be down in Stark County, and that's okay. But again, that's going to be on Saturday. But Friday night, we'll talk to you from Macedonia. Looking forward to it again. It's going to be 3-1 Stow against 3-2 Nordonia. We will hit the air on WKYC.com, on the WKYC app, Facebook Live, and YouTube right around 6:50 to wrap up the regular season and then get into a 7-week postseason to crown state champions. So get ready, folks. This is it's a little different, but it's still the same fun.
As I have done in years past, I will have a complete guide on WKYC.com showing every game involving Northeast Ohio teams. That will include, as like last year, the Lucas Cubs. When we covered, I keep having to slip them in every year as they compete for a every week as they compete for a state championship. No one will be forgotten. We will give you your just due. And it's going to be a lot larger this year because everyone makes it. But, Dino, I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be fun. I don't know if I'd want this every year, but for this year, given the circumstances, it's going to be very, very interesting and very, very incredible to watch.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly have an expanded playoff preview next Wednesday as we'll get everybody ready for the first week of the playoffs, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But again, Stow and Nordonia, our game of the week this Friday night. We'll talk to you from Macedonia. For Tyler Carey, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thank you so much for watching our WKYC High School Football Game of the Week preview show.